back of everything that we do is that relationship. He's in charge. And the 5th chapter of Matthew, all the Beatitudes, that is the basis of everything that Jesus said in Beatitudes. We realize in the back of our mind that no matter what, God is in charge. So we do have some fear and reverence, or whatever you want to call it, to God, because he is in charge.
Yeah, and that's a good point, George. And what came to my mind is what you hear mothers say, and I'm probably some mothers in here, and knowing a little history with Miss Linda Brown right there, and some stubborn boys. I'm sure they've probably heard the term, I brought you into this world, I could take you out of this world, at one point or another. And we think about God, and it's a fearful thing to fall into the hands of the living God. And when we start thinking, well, you don't own me, I can do it myself, right? And we start thinking, well, who are you to tell me? Because, all that stuff you were telling me, that's for little kids. I'm an adult now. And we were laughing about that, having some man children. And I don't know if one of my man child's in here today. They might be late or another class. But we call them man child because they are legally adults, but we're paying for everything still. So don't tell me about being a man yet, okay, until you're supporting yourself. And, I'm telling you, understanding the relationship of parents with children will help you to understand us as children with God, to understand when we do want to do things ourselves, and when we do want to do things that God really, and we know, okay, well, God said this, but I think, that was for a different time, different place, I'm much smarter now, and I understand all that. I'm gonna stay away from the bad things. Who are we to tell God how to live our lives? We have another hand up over? Yeah, Kim.
Yes, hope my comments do not appear to be mean at all. But America has this thing about convenience, especially short-term convenience. It's a love, and I wouldn't say we worship it as a God, but sometimes it gets close. For example, in the case of the teenage abortion, many of these young girls, they decide it's very inconvenient for me to have a child now. So the child is murdered. And there's other examples. For example, many people don't attend services because it's inconvenient. But it's always a short-term thing. If you look at the long-term, eternal punishment is very inconvenient.
Yeah, exactly. Great point. We're all about convenience today. If I have to put something in the microwave and it says 5 minutes, forget that. That microwave should, I don't know if you guys are anyone in here follow Star Trek, the old Star Trek. I think it was, they would put something in there, push a button, and open the door, and it would come out a whole meal. And here we are in 2022, we should already have that by now. So I don't know why we don't. But we do have enough conveniences where, unfortunately, on the bad side, it's just not convenient. We were mentioning, I think, talking this morning about a famous couple getting married. Wayne Gretzky's daughter was marrying one of the golfers, Dustin. Okay, yeah, you don't have to be embarrassed if you shout that out that you're following that. That's fine. But here's the thing, though. I said, oh, okay, so that's the high-powered elite couple getting married in the athletic world. Well, then she says, well, they already have 2 kids. One's 7 years old. I said, well, why get married? What was the big revelation now? We need to get married. They had at least 7 years, if not more, to do it. And it's the lack of appreciation for the family. It's the lack of relationship, goes back to relationship, of how God set things up, relationship with each other, relationships of you as a spouse, the respect I should have for you as my spouse. And then that relationship leads into a relationship of having children and the respect that we have for our children. And we should value life, and then that should lead in teaching our children that they'll have respect. We all know what we just came out of and towns burning and people looting and people burning cities. And we're in here shaking our heads. Has the world gone crazy? I don't think it's any worse than in the Roman era. I know reading the Roman era, they did a lot of bad things. Now, the Roman era probably wouldn't have let them do that because they would have snuffed them out. So, we have this newfound understanding, newfound knowledge of, well, we need to let people act out. They're just expressing their belief, expressing their emotions and feelings. And unfortunately, sometimes maybe we can go too far on relationships. And there's a point which you read where God says, no, enough is enough. And you know what? We need to go and take and do some cleansing. Now, I think one last thing before I get into the second half. I hope I get the second half. I'm sitting here talking so much, I might not get to it. But as far as the last one, we kind of ended on why God allowed them to kill babies or small little children. And the writer of this article, this study, brought out a good point that in that day and age, that would really, when you think about it, if you think about it right then, it's a horrific thing. Anyone to lose a child is a horrific thing, especially the way that they did. And it's hard for us to understand that. But in the bigger picture, those children that were underage, I mean, what happened to them? They get a one-way ticket to heaven, right? So in the big picture, yeah, they may have not been able to live a life on this earth and experience what it is to be a human being, to be in relationships, but it's not a bad alternative in my mind, if you're already going up to heaven. So, God's understanding in those things, it's hard for us to understand, and we all know that our ways are not His ways, our understanding is not His understanding, so we just have to trust and have faith that God knows what He's doing, and also see the severity of God, that God doesn't play around. There's real meaning to our actions. There's real meaning to our society in the way that we treat other people. And we're trying to fight the good fight. We're trying to promote family. We're promoting loving relationships, obedient relationships to God. And unfortunately, it's tough. Satan's got control of all the TV networks. Satan's got control of a lot of the music. Satan's got control of academia. I'm going to even say that. And not that these are Baal-run organizations or institutions with the devil up there and burning people and chopping heads off. He doesn't have to do all that. All he has to do is create doubt in God's plan. And you know what? You don't need that. You've got a better plan. You're too smart for all that. And kind of let us do our thing. And it's, as human beings, if we don't have God leading us, I mean, look where we go to, And so what I want to get into next is, unless anyone had a comment. Sometimes it's hard up here as a speaker. When you raise your hand many times, raise it up real high because, when we're talking up here, I'm kind of looking inside my head, and it's hard for me to see some of my hand. Yes, sir, Josh.
I was going to say concerning what you were saying, about the killing of the innocent children. One thing to also keep in mind is the fact, how bad these nations like the Canaanites got and stuff like that. They've gotten so bad where it's basically to the point where God says wipe them out. And not just because of that, not just because of their wickedness, but also the influence that they would have upon the children of Israel. Because you look at where they came from, they just came out of Egypt. Look at that idolatrous mess. But then you also look at, when they decided to set up the golden calf and said, hey, this is your God, O Israel. You look at that, so obviously they would be easily influenced, especially by these other nations' gods. So something needed to be done.
Yeah, it doesn't take much, as we find out, to stir up the people, to influence us. Just replace all that with stuff we have today as an influence. Come down front here, Tom. So the stuff we have today, does someone have to put up a gold calf to convince you to worship it other than God? No, that might not work with you today, but there's a lot more subtle things that will pull us away from God. That's really what it's all about, pulling your trust away from God and putting your trust in something else. Stock market, your bank account, things that we use for security, that, boy, if the stock market crashed, or boy, if my savings, what if somebody took all my money out of my savings, what would I ever do? You know, I need to protect that. I need to put my effort into building that account up. You know, that mindset to me is you've taken your faith away from God and you're putting it in something else that's tangible, that can go anytime. The great thing about keeping your faith in God is all that can go away. It can go away tomorrow. And you're going to survive because we know God's going to protect us. Yes, sir, Tom.
I was looking at the letter from Paul to the Romans in the first chapter. In the 25th verse, it says, "For they exchanged the truth of God for a lie, and worshiped and served the created things rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever and ever. Amen."
Boy, I tell you, that was like it was written for today, wasn't it? I mean, it was written back in the Bible times, but how better an explanation you could provide to the exact same things today. You know, we haven't changed much at all, it doesn't seem like. And I don't want to bash on us as human race. This is kind of the context we're in. Let me do Robert, you back there.
Both start with an R, it's good. I was thinking more than the undermining of faith is the undermining of hope. It's very easy when things are going poorly to lose hope and then to find, little distractions that give us hope and happiness in a very short-term fashion as opposed to seeing a bigger picture, the hope of heaven eventually. And I think that undermines people's faith. We have to be constantly reminded that, if Jesus can raise himself from the grave, then every other promise he made is just as good.
That's exactly right. And when you're talking about just a whole class on hope, right there it is. We also read, we do a little news thing, coming to church sometimes, he reads these news things, about a kid that was driving a BMW at 150, 60 miles an hour and ran into the back of a car and killed a whole family in a car. Turns out he was suicidal, and he did that intentionally. It didn't kill him. And so there's something in the news about his family's pleading for him to not be held totally accountable for that because he's suicidal. But you're talking about what kind of hope have that person had to lose to get to the point where you don't care and you're just going to go out, and if you take someone out with you, all this ties together. No relationships, no hope, to drive a person with that mindset to do that. Yes, Sharon.
We started out by talking about how people, and sometimes we even question God and the decisions that he makes. But I have a comment here that it's not an original thought, but it goes along with what we've been talking about how God is all-knowing, and his judgments are his judgments based on his character. And with regard to the killing of children by the Israelites when they went in to destroy a nation. But this comment says, though the enemies of the God of the Bible are frequently heard criticizing Israel's conquest of Canaan, the fact is, such a conquest was in complete harmony with God's perfectly loving, holy, and righteous nature. After patiently waiting for hundreds of years, God eventually used the Israelites to bring judgment upon myriads of wicked Canaanites. Simultaneously, he spared their children a fate much worse than physical death, the horror of growing up in a reprehensible culture and becoming like their hedonistic parents. and immediately ushered them into a pain-free, marvelous place called paradise.
That's exactly right, and that's what we were talking about, weren't we? I think you brought that out better than what we did last time, and God cleansing the people and really doing, it's hard for us to understand that, but really protecting the lineage of Christ by keeping it pure. That's the important thing, by bringing Christ into the world. That's the goal. That was the goal. It still is the goal. And keeping Christ in the world, if you will. That's our goal. Christ did his part, and now it's up to us to reflect that and shine our lights to do our part. That's the challenge for us. Talking about, now this kind of goes into our next segment of this. I don't have the right to go out and take a crusade against the heathen today. Number one, it would be my decision, right? I would be the one judging who's heathen, who's not. Well, that's false right there. If we start taking out our judgment, because we read God's judgment in the Old Testament, well, God hated those people. So I'm okay. I can hate people too. That's not what it's about at all. So this is called biblical imprecations, and I have trouble pronouncing this. I don't know why. But the imprecatory sections of the Scripture are those portions that contain the writer's prayers or songs for vengeance upon enemies, or which end in triumphant praise at their destruction. For example, destroy thou them, O God. This is in Psalms. So now what we're talking about is, now why do we read in the Bible King David singing songs about destruction? We see other people in the Bible who gave praise to the demise and to destruction of another nation or other human beings. And they did this triumphantly as worship, almost like as a song to God. We read here, right? Pronounce them guilty, O God. Let them fall by their own counsels. Cast them out in the multitude of their transgressions, for they have rebelled against you. Psalms 10:15. Break the arm of the wicked and the evil man. Seek out his wickedness until you find none. Jeremiah 15. O Lord, remember me and visit me and take vengeance for me on my persecutors. In your enduring patience, do not take me away. Know that for your sake I have suffered rebuke. So many have wondered how such expressions can be part of divine revelation. Though the subject is complex, perhaps the following thoughts will shed some light on this matter. And it's important to note that these writings are not mere hot-headed bursts of personal vindictiveness characteristic an inferior Old Testament code. So what we're getting in here about Bible imprecations is we can read where God did his judgment or worked out his judgment on people. That doesn't give us the right to do the same thing. And like something I have to fight against is coming here to church. We go by the Market Square down there, and what are people doing this Sunday morning when you drive by there? They're having the Market Spring Festival. They're having all the fun stuff that we like to enjoy when we go out on let's just say a Saturday morning and eat churros and all that. Well, they're all doing that this morning there. And I have to fight against my urge and my thought of saying, look at those sinners. Why are they doing that? They need to be in church. Don't they know what's important? And almost to the point where I get mad inside at those people that do that. Instead of compassion, saying, boy, look, they need God. They need the love of God. Why don't I start going down there sometime and maybe trying to teach people, I think there's a guy on that corner down there or used to be a woman down there that had the bullhorn and all that. And, more power to someone that does that. I don't know if that's the best method, but at least they're doing something. So I should feel guilty and say, well, that person at least doing something. I don't know if they're preaching the truth or not, but at least they're fighting for their belief, of a difference, right, in the world. But how many times do we find ourselves thinking, well, we see someone doing something bad, and then they get caught, and we say, man, we string them up. They deserve what they get. So somebody, I think, flew by us in traffic today, and that's what kind of brought this up about that person driving the BMW. But flew by, and whip around in front of you. And I think, there's a cop that usually sits up there. I hope he's up there this morning, because I'm going to go by and toot my horn if I got him pulled over. I got to fight that. That's my humanistic side. Yes, sir, Jack.
We always struggle with what do we say when you first meet a particular person, or if you go into a grocery store or something like that. And this is a challenge that I've tried to work with as much as I can. But, you can't hold a Bible study. And so what do? I've tried a lot of different things, a little card, maybe just say thank you. And then on the other side, something about, my passing is not all that important, but what you need to know is the passing of the Lord and being with Him. So there's things that you can do that, and if nothing else, that when the cashier rings it up and you get it and you're picking up your grocery stores, if nothing else, just say God bless you, and you say, well, does that do any good? Well, they heard the name God today, if nothing else. And if more of us, I guess, hopefully would try to do that, hopefully we'd get somebody that would be interesting. One time, interesting, the cashier said, "Would you pray for me right now?"
Wow.
So I mean,
never know.
For us doing some of these things are doable, and it doesn't take a lot of training or anything else like that. It's just saying, God bless you.
You never know. And Jack hit on what one of the thoughts that I always try to have, and that one of the prayers is put somebody in my path that's looking for the truth. And give me the boldness and the understanding to recognize that at that moment, and maybe reach out and make a statement. And you never know, right? You never know how that works out. Sometimes what we fight against is wanting to take vengeance. We're the other side of Jack a little bit. I think we fight ourselves wanting to make people pay. They should pay for what they've done, and that kind of thing. And so in the Bible, when we read these verses, of almost praise and song to God about taking vengeance on things. We recognize, of course, that, and this is what the writer says, recognize, of course, that a lower level of moral responsibility was tolerated in an ancient infantile human race that gradually was being prepared for the coming of the gospel age. And as a child, we don't know how to manage our emotions. And there again, to me, if you're going to hear me speak, you'll probably hear me use the relationship of a parent and a child. Think about when we, as children, how they get angry right away at something. And they don't understand maybe how to control that emotion. So, we have to train them. We have to teach them. And now one thing about children that's good is, and probably grown up when you're a little kid like I did, when me and my best friend got in a fight, we punched each other till we were tired and really hated each other that moment. But the next day we went over and shook hands and we went right back to what we were doing before. It wasn't a big deal, just part of growing up. So we can learn that side of it. But man's development for Jesus to come to the world, man's relationship with God still had to grow. And so we can read these Old Testament passages, and we can read scriptures like this where they were praying for demise. When we have our children and someone was mean to them and they want, you as a dad, well, can you go beat them up? No, I can't do that. And here's why. And you got to talk to them about it and try to teach them how to have a better way to handle that. And I think that's what this writer is indicating here. Let's see. So this kind of starts going into Exodus 25. So if you meet your enemies, so this is God's response. If you meet your enemy's ox or his donkey going astray, you shall surely bring it back to him. If you see the donkey of one who hates you lying under its burden, and you would refrain from helping it, you shall surely help him with it. So this is God training them when acting out and being, I think that's just our human nature to see someone suffer for doing bad. So this is God now, they're showing that relationship. God's teaching us as a human race. Real quick before I miss you.
That's okay. Along the lines of becoming more mature and more in control of our emotions, I heard a sermon once where the preacher said, for ourselves we want mercy, but for others we want justice. And so it's so good, you know, as we develop spiritually to want mercy for everybody, because that's what Jesus died for.
Boy, that's the truth. And, you know, part of growing up, I think, as an adult in our time is when I'm ready to throw a rock at somebody. And then I think, well, wait a minute, what if that's me? I sure would want people picking up throwing a rock at me. And so that little things like that help me to grow. Yes, you're right.
Well, it goes back to the original sin of Eve. It was selfishness. And Jesus is the anti of that, where he comes and gives himself. He's not selfish at all. He gives his life for us, where Eve was selfish, and all through time, all their sin is the same sin. Selfish. It's what I want. It's what I want. I'll take what you've got because I want it. So it's selfishness. And he wanted to punish the Canaanites for their selfishness and sent the Israelites in there to give them example of how to live. And then they didn't live that way, so God had the Babylonians come in and wipe them out, and Amorites to come and punish them for it.
Yeah, that's definitely what it revolves. I mean, today's society, it's all about selfishness, you know, and we can see that it's all about me and mine and how much can I build up for myself. But on the flip side, and there again, I don't want to throw our human race under the bus all the time. You know, out of diversity and out of tragedy, you know, we can see what human nature, the good side of that, how we pull together, how we help each other, how we do good things for people in troubled times. So, you know, when we see those moments, we can reflect and say, well, okay, good, humanity's still alive in some pockets, in some areas, and, you know, what can I do as a single person to help that? What can I do in my life? Is there something that I can get myself right? And I've told people this before, driving and getting in a car, to me, at an early Darren, was somebody cut me off. Boy, I was on your bumper the whole time. And don't want to be a hypocrite and say I haven't pulled close to somebody since then, but I think I've grown, because now I say, you know what, that person may really be in a hurry. And I think I was in a hurry one time to get home to something was going on with Carson or something, and I was in a hurry to get home, and I didn't have a way to talk to him. And I was trying to get around some guy, and he thought I was being a jerk and trying to pass him. Well, he gunned it, and I gunned it, and we were coming up to a single lane. And unfortunately, I did not have the vehicle to beat that guy. And so my whole thought process went to, okay, I need to start souping up this motor. So then it helps me to think, well, you know, someone trying to get around me, instead of just going to my mind that they're a jerk, why not? It's easy for me to say, well, you know what, they may have a sick child at home. They may have a call that their wife called, and she's in desperate need to get home. You know, and boy, how that just changes your outlook. And I give them space and go take care of business, whatever you need to do. And it's just simple things like that we can change our outlook. We can change our view. We can change our heart and really look at the good in people. Even though they may not be good, we don't care. That doesn't affect us. We're going to do good to them, right? Let me just see if I can get through a couple of these. I know our bell already rung. So this is God, remember, training us as a human race to the point of Christ coming, to helping us to get to the point we are today, where we can make judgments today based off God's judgments. So God said, you should not hate your brother in your heart. You shall surely rebuke your neighbor and not bear sin because of him. You shall not take vengeance nor bear any grudge against the children of your people, but you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Have we heard that before? Do not say, I will recompense evil. Wait for the Lord, and he will save you. Do not rejoice when your enemy falls. You can check your box on that. That's one to have to work on. And do not let your heart be glad when he stumbles. If your enemy is hungry, give him bread to eat. If he's thirsty, give him water to drink. For so you will heap coals of fire on his head, and the Lord will reward you No, that was it. So this is one of the things I think that we can that God's training His people to get to the point today where we can go and actually put this into practice. Chris may have to sit out one more time. Maybe he'll get sick again because I do want to finish this. But so what we'll end today with is just using this opportunity to, when you read the Old Testament, that not to get stuck and say, boy, those people didn't know anything. You know, that was God intended that. He used our relationship with Him in an early stage to develop our relationship to the point when Christ came where we can accept it. And we could use that new relationship that we have with God and Christ and understand that to the point where now, instead of us wanting to take over lands and take over nations and punish people, we should be at a point in our understanding and our maturity as a Christian to take what God did for us and use that and apply it. How can we use that for other people around us? Those people need saving too. These people need saving. God saved me. I'm the chiefest of sinners, you know, and all the stuff that motivated Paul to go do. And I think that's what we can learn from, you know, the relationship in the Old Testament. So that's the class this morning. Thank you. You've been very patient for commenting, and maybe we'll finish this thing up one day. Thank you.